Born in darkness, destined for light. The story of Festus, son of Timaeus. Chapter 1. A world without dawn. Festus came into the world on a night when no stars shone over Bethlehem. The midwife who delivered him whispered prayers of concern as she held the newborn up to the flickering oil lamp, her weathered hands trembling as she examined his eyes. They were perfectly formed, beautifully shaped, but they held no light, no spark of recognition, no response to the flame she moved before his face. "The child is blind," she said softly to his mother Miriam, who lay exhausted on the birthing mat, born without sight. Miriam's heart, already swollen with the fierce love that comes with new motherhood, cracked at the words. She reached for her son, pulling him close to her breast, and felt the weight of all the dreams she had harbored during her pregnancy settle like stones in her chest. This child would never see her face, never witness a sunrise, never read the sacred scrolls or learn his father's trade of carpentry. Perhaps, the midwife added gently, it would be a mercy. No. Miriam's voice was steel wrapped in silk. This child is a gift from the Almighty. If God has given him to us in darkness, then we will love him in darkness. His father, Timaeus, stood in the doorway, his broad shoulders sagging under the weight of this news. He had dreamed of teaching his son the family trade, of watching him grow into a man who could provide for his own family. But what future was there for a blind child in a world that demanded strength, skill, and independence? Yet when Festus was placed in his father's arms, something shifted. The baby's tiny fingers found his beard and gripped it with surprising strength. In that moment, Timaeus felt the presence of the divine, not in explanation or comfort, but in the simple reality of unconditional love. "His name will be Festus," Timaeus declared, his voice thick with emotion. "Joyful one, for even in darkness he will bring light to our lives." But even as he spoke these words of hope, Timaeus felt the weight of an uncertain future pressing down upon him. How could he prepare a blind child for a world that had no place for those who couldn't see? How could he teach him to be a man when society would forever see him as less than whole? Chapter 2. Growing in shadow. Festus's early years were a careful dance between protection and preparation. Miriam and Timaeus surrounded him with love, but they also knew that the world beyond their door would not be so kind. They had to prepare him for a life that would be defined by limitations he had never chosen and barriers he had never erected. The house became a geography of sounds and textures. Festus learned to navigate by the creak of the third floorboard, the draft that whistled through the crack in the eastern wall, the way his mother's voice carried differently when she stood by the cooking fire versus when she sat at her loom. His world was rich with information that others never noticed. The sound of his father's sandals on stone versus wood, the different tones his mother's voice took when she was happy, worried, or tired. "Feel this," Timaeus would say, guiding Festus's small hands over a piece of wood. "This is cedar. Notice how smooth it is, how it smells like the temple incense. And this," he moved the child's fingers to another plank, "this is oak. Rough, strong, stubborn. Each wood has its own voice, its own purpose." Festus absorbed these lessons with an intensity that amazed his parents. His fingers became his eyes, developing a sensitivity that could detect the slightest variations in texture, temperature, and grain. He learned to identify his mother's moods by the rhythm of her weaving, to predict his father's actions by the way he moved around the workshop. But for all their love and careful teaching, his parents could not shield him from the reality of his condition. The neighborhood children, initially curious about the blind boy, soon lost interest when they realized he couldn't participate in their games. They would play hide and seek while he sat alone, kick balls that he couldn't see coming, race through streets that he couldn't navigate. "Why can't I play with them?" Festus asked his mother one evening, his voice small and confused. Miriam's heart broke a little more. "Because you're different, my love. But different doesn't mean less valuable. God has plans for you that we can't see yet." It was the first of many conversations about his place in the world, about the ways that society would try to define him by his limitations rather than his potential. But even as his parents tried to prepare him for the challenges ahead, they couldn't fully comprehend the depth of the isolation he would face.